There Ain't No Cure for the Winter Wolf Blues, a Canadian Werewolf story by Mark Leslie. Narrated by Scott Overton. March 2nd, 2016, 6:32 a.m. A morning commute in winter can be hell. Mine in particular, which involves waking naked, frozen, and scrambling around in the snow to find my clothes, might be a bit more of a unique experience than it is for others, but it's never simple or easy. Nobody ever thinks about the impact that a simple thing like a snowfall can have on a normal person's regular morning commute in a major city like New York. If you live in a house and drive to work, when a heavy snowfall hits, you can't pull out of your driveway or sometimes away from the curb where your car has been plowed in until you shovel, which means you must get started a good 15 minutes to half an hour earlier than on any other day. And the traffic itself is going to be a bit of a snafu, particularly if you live in an area that isn't used to consistent snowfall. Drivers in those places suffer from recurring snow-covered road driving amnesia. Every fresh snowfall is like an unexpected surprise, something they've never seen before. That'll add perhaps another 15 minutes or half an hour onto the drive. Assuming, of course, that you don't get in an accident trying to move too fast on the icy roads. If you live in a large metropolitan area like Manhattan, it might be less likely that you must shovel a driveway or even own a vehicle. But your bipedal excursion to the city's public transit is possibly going to be hampered by snowdrifts, slush, and walking over mounds of dirty, crusty snowbanks at intersections where the plow cleared the road, but the sidewalk cleaners haven't yet arrived. Then, numb from the cold, uncomfortably bulky from dressing for the bitter weather, you stumble into the subway and spend the next half hour to hour overheated from being crammed into a large metal sardine can with a sweaty mass of other winter garb-wearing miserable commuters. And you spend much of the trip calculating how a subway car holds about 250 people, but if each person suddenly has one or two more extra layers of clothing, how much less air, less space each person has on a winter day. Like I said, winter brings a hell of a commute. But normal folks have nothing on my own frustrating commute. At least not during the time of month when the moon is in the realm where it's at least 3/4 full and between sunset and sunrise. It's those times that I have no control over my metamorphosis into a 6-foot-long gray wolf. You'd think that after the past decade of suffering through New York winters with my condition that I'd have gotten smart about it and either moved somewhere warmer or at least might winter in a more tropical climate. But no, like some pathetic Frank Sinatra wannabe with an 8-track tape stuck on repeat, I seem locked into wanting to make a new start of it in old New York. It's not the smartest place in the world to live when once a month for half a dozen or so days I'm forced to run around on all fours howling at the moon. And it's not as if I control the conversion. It comes on faster than those spontaneous erections I used to get in the middle of math class for no good reason as an adolescent boy. I mean, seriously, who gets sexually excited over calculus equations? Nor do I have any remaining human consciousness or memory of the time when I'm a wolf. Nothing more than the occasional snippet of foggy memory bits that sometimes float into my human brain. Which means that over the years I've had to develop a routine, my obscure monthly moon cycle commute, if you will. Prior to sunset, I'll leave my place in Midtown and head to Central Park, where I find a private, heavily wooded area to strip away my clothes and shoes and tuck them away somewhere for retrieval in the morning. Then I lay on the ground and wait for that feeling, which I can only describe as being like a pre-seizure aura, alerting me that the change is about to occur. After a night of running around on all fours in my other form, which to me is not all that different from a night of sleep, I wake up, naked, confused, and I hustle to where I stored my clothes the night before. I only need to do that for about a week every month. Then it's back to normal. And with the way winters in New York work, there are maybe only a handful of times where the inclement weather makes it a major pain in the ass. There is always the option of locking myself in my apartment for the transformation, but I've learned that I can only repress my wolf self's need for the outdoors for so long before there are dire consequences to my well-being. That half of me is only around for a limited time once a month, and I need to unleash that pent-up energy or else suffer dramatic consequences. If I repress my other half's innate need to run wild through the fields for more than one monthly cycle, it gets worse. The effects on me are like a combination of intense sleep deprivation combined with a type of emotional migraine. I'm beyond just moody or short-tempered. I become uncontrollably angry at the tiniest things. And considering I wield extraordinary wolf-enhanced strength and agility even as a human, that can be a dangerous thing. So, I usually only repress my wolf self during the winter months once. And I did that last month, with my friend Gail's help. Over the years, I'd developed ways to deal with it on my own, but ever since my ex-girlfriend from several years ago returned to my life in a platonic way, while also revealing to me she knew I was a werewolf, she would assist me with some of my transitions, occasionally staying over at my place to just be there to watch out for me when I was in wolf form. Gail said that, as a wolf, I was not at all threatening to her, that I seemed to, in fact, recognize who she was, and that she was an ally or a pack member, that I behaved in a rather domesticated way. She would talk to me, pet me, and snuggle up to me to sleep, not all that different than she would with a dog. Considering that I never stopped loving Gail, even years after our relationship had ended, I was simply not over her. I was insanely jealous of my wolf self. I caught the occasional snippet of memory of my wolf self's interactions with Gail, teasing glimpses of her voice, her touch, and that drove me insane. What I wouldn't give to experience those moments with my full human consciousness, even if I could never again be with this incredible woman whose love I had so foolishly lost. But we had a solid friendship now, and though I had already admitted to her how I felt, I didn't push it. Because even though it hurt to be so close and yet so far, I'd rather have her back in my life as a friend than to not have her in my life at all. I try not to dwell on it, not to walk around with a woe is me attitude, especially not in front of Gail. She knows how I feel, and my enhanced senses tell me she has similar feelings of attraction towards me. But she has stated she is not interested in returning to a romantic relationship. It was just too much for her, particularly after the betrayal and hurt from the last time she allowed herself to be vulnerable. As I said, last month during the bitter cold of February, I'd remained indoors, and Gail had stayed with me. But not only was she out of town this time around, attending a paranormal conference near Boston, she's the co-owner of an occult shop in the East Village called Enchanting Magic, but it was too dangerous for me to continue to repress my wolf self's burning desire to run free in the dark of night. And so, as I've already alluded to, that's how I wake to find myself here, naked, freezing cold, and scrambling about in the snow trying to find where I'd stored my clothes. As a wolf, my fur-covered body isn't bothered by the winter weather, but as a human, it truly sucks. I run over to where I remember stashing my clothes and dig desperately with my bare hands through the bitingly frozen snowdrift. It had snowed early in the afternoon yesterday and had continued most of the day. It was still snowing when I had arrived at Central Park and found a spot to shove the plastic bag of my clothes. But it obviously continued to snow after I changed into a wolf, and the winds must have picked up because the spot where I'd shoved my bag is buried under a 3-foot-high snowdrift. What had I been thinking using a plain, white, oversized grocery bag? Why hadn't I used a blue or green one? As I paw through the snow, my body shivering from the below-freezing temperature, my bare feet and lower legs burn from contact with the icy snow. My fingers are numb and virtually useless as I finally uncover the white plastic bag and pull it free from its burial spot. Though it hurts now, I know that once I get my clothes on, I'll quickly recover. My wolf blood brings with it an enhanced constitution and regenerative healing properties. But that doesn't make the current frostbitten sensation any easier to bear. Heck, I'm afraid to glance down at my exposed genitalia where I can definitely feel that biting cold. Based on the temperature, I'm pretty sure they're not merely tucked up tight to the comparative warmth of my body, but that they're likely already traversing past my stomach to see if there's a balmier location closer to my heart. I tear the bag open with frantic desperation, and the clothes within explode in a multitude of directions onto the snowy landscape in front of me. As I grab, then fumble to pull on the jeans, my fingers are too numb to draw up the zipper or fasten the button. So once the pants are on, I retrieve my t-shirt and slip it over my head. It's too difficult to pull on my socks, so I jam both feet into my boots, again unable to operate the zipper on the side of them. Then I pull on my light jacket and thrust my numb hands into the jacket pockets to warm them. Maybe Florida next year, I mutter, watching my breath vapors hang in the air. Florida would be nice this time of year. Maybe Southern California, Texas, Arizona, any of those places would be better than New York from November through March. But I only ever think of that at moments like this. Then it fades. I was like a hungover man who, the morning after a night of binge drinking, wakes up dehydrated, nauseous, and with a terrible headache, telling himself he'll never drink again. But he does. Because in the spring it'll all warm up again, and I'll tell myself that the winter wasn't all that bad. I'll remind myself that for the rest of the year this is one of the best cities in the world, and I spent most of my youth dreaming of moving to New York City, the city where my favorite hero, Spider-Man, lived, and being a best-selling writer. Both dreams came true. So too, interestingly enough, did that superhero element. The wolf blood that courses through my veins doesn't just mean a transmogrification during the cycle of the full moon. When in human form, I keep many of the wolfish attributes. I mentioned earlier that I have enhanced senses. I can hear and smell things that no normal human can, including emotions, even heartbeats. My constitution, my strength, are all somehow augmented in a superhuman way. I've leveraged these unique abilities to help others, mostly to help thwart thieves and muggers, and admittedly I've used my ability to effectively read people to get ahead as a writer and storyteller. It's easier to adjust your pitch to an agent, for example, when you're able to detect what impact your words are having, or to charm that interviewer or the bookstore employee when you're on a book tour. So many of those subtle elements have no doubt led to helping me fast-track my road to success. But, needless to say, I've been pretty lucky, rich enough to be living full-time in a permanent apartment at the Algonquin Hotel, thanks to several New York Times best-selling novels and numerous film and television adaptations of my works. I'm cold, tired, and hungry. I'm always ravenous after a night of running around as a wolf. I suspect it's because of the incredible number of calories that activity burns. But I'm only about a 15 to 20-minute walk away from my home. I shuffle out of the snowy area and onto the path that leads to Bow Bridge and south through the park. As I cross the bridge, I'm struck with an incredibly powerful memory. This was the spot back in 2011 when, almost immediately after making fun of all the couples who engaged in cliched romance on this very bridge, Gail first told me she loved me. Her words echo in my head as I pause on the downslope of the bridge where we'd been standing. I love you, Michael Andrews. I am wildly, completely in love with you. I can see her beautiful smile, her green, powerful eyes that always pulled me in, her breath on my neck as we held one another and then kissed. It remains the most incredible kiss of my life. Our first kiss, in the lobby of the Algonquin Hotel several months earlier, had been the one to beat. But that one on this very bridge surpassed it, because it came moments after the woman I love so completely told me she loved me. I had everything, and yet I screwed it up. Because I continued to lie to her, despite knowing how her biggest Achilles heel was when she was deceived, when her trust, which did not come lightly, was betrayed. I kept my lycanthropic affliction from her. That ongoing deception led to our eventual breakup and her walking out of my life, because she'd figured it out on her own and was hurt that I hadn't trusted her enough to share it with her. It should just be water under the bridge, particularly since she returned to my life last summer, even if it was only as a friend. But there was a part of me, deep in my heart, that could not let go. Gail was my soulmate. I knew it in my bones, and no matter what happened for the rest of my life, no matter who else I might be romantically involved with, that would always be there, buried deep in my heart. I'm so absorbed in thoughts of Gail that I barely pay attention to the rest of my walk through the park. As I leave the park via Terrace Drive to head down Fifth Avenue, I merge into the pedestrian traffic of people on their own morning commutes to work. Now, layered from much of the cold, combined with the walk, which pumps warm blood through my veins, and my hearty constitution, I'm feeling warmer, which brings some comfort. I only have on a light jacket, so can still feel the bite of the cold, though it's not nearly as bad as standing naked in the snow had been. And my ungloved fingers, despite the slight warmth of my jacket pockets and my blowing onto them and rubbing them together, are still chilled to the bone. A few paces ahead of me, an older woman is struggling to navigate the icy sidewalks with a cane, picking her way slowly forward. As I slow my approach, considering on which side I'll carefully overtake her, a pedestrian behind me who wasn't paying attention crashes into me. The collision barely moves me, though it likely would have sent a normal person pitching forward, but even on this snow-covered slippery surface, my agile nature and brute strength keep me upright. "Watch it," the man in a full-length beige winter coat and reeking of an overabundance of Armani's Acqua di Gio says as he elbows his way past me on the right. I'm surprised I didn't smell his approach from several blocks away, or perhaps even could smell when earlier that morning he drew a bathtub full of the cologne. As the man skirts past the old woman, his left foot grazes the side of her cane. She loses her grip on it, and she falls to her right. I leap forward and catch her right shoulder in the crook of my arm. Then I gently restore her to a fully upright position and bend to retrieve the fallen cane. The scent coming off her is a combination of surprise and relief. Then the emotion I smell coming from her turns to disgust as she realizes what has happened. I, too, am disgusted by the rude, self-centered asshole who roughly brushed past us both. But as I am handing her the cane, the pinched eyebrows and scowl on her face are, I realize, directed at me. "What? No apology?" she says. And I realize that it all happened so fast she didn't even realize it was the guy in the beige coat and not me who had put her off balance. She thought I was the one who'd knocked her over. "No," she says, answering her own question. "You're in too much of a rush to even think of others. I'm surprised you even bothered to pick up my cane." I consider explaining to her, but can smell that the rich, rude dude has already pushed his way past a half-dozen others and is well out of sight. Offering her a weak smile, I do what comes naturally to my Canadian upbringing. "Sorry," I say. Then, embarrassed, I shuffle my way across the street to continue to make my way south down Fifth Avenue without looking back. As I pass a coffee shop, I bemoan the fact that I never bring a wallet with me on the nights where my changed wolf occurs. Because I live in a hotel, the doorman and concierge who know me well always let me in without a key or my ID, so I needn't risk losing them should someone discover my hidden clothes stash while I'm tearing about on all fours. But a warm, rich, and dark roast blend would hit the spot right now, even just to cradle the warmth of the cup in my bitterly cold and stiff hands. A few blocks further south, I pass a homeless man who was crawling out from his sleeping bag in the cardboard box that was his makeshift shelter for the night. I can smell the stale sweat of his slept-in clothes and the remnants of last night's bottle of vodka on his breath, even before his head pops out from the depths of the old refrigerator box. Our eyes meet momentarily, and my hands immediately pat my empty pockets as I shrug my shoulders in that universal sign that I'd like to help him out, but have nothing on me. He smiles and wordlessly tips a forefinger off the side of his forehead in a casual, quiet salute. Despite having more in common with the economic and social status of the dude who bathes in Giorgio Armani or the confused old woman who thought I was the jerk who'd knocked her over, I felt more of a connection and kinship to this homeless man I'd just walked by, even though we hadn't exchanged a single word. Well, apart from offering a complete stranger a smile, another thing the two of us have in common was we both woke up outside on the ground. The difference is that, in the next half hour, I'll be warm inside my luxury apartment, and he'll still be out in the cold. Up ahead, from somewhere around the corner, I can hear tires spinning on packed snow and ice to the accompanying tune of an engine revving. It continues persistently, and I shake my head, thinking how this seems as fruitful as pushing harder on a door that is labeled pull. As I'm about to cross East 67th Street, I hear someone cursing a blue streak from inside their car and spot the vehicle that has been making the ruckus I'd heard. There's a navy blue BMW on the curb a little over a quarter of the way down the block that's stuck in a massive bank of plowed snow. The poor schmuck inside the car likely figured he could just power through it, and he's now caught. Sighing, I consider the idea of continuing to walk south along Fifth Avenue, but I know myself too well. He'll never get out, not without some help. I hustle down the street, and as I get to his car, I gesture that I'm going to give him a hand. He nods and smiles. It doesn't take much other than placing a foot up against the curb to ensure stability and then giving his car a hearty shove to provide the momentum and leverage he needs to clear the snowbank. As the car breaks free from its bounds and the wheels catch full traction, the car shoots forward onto the street and I pitch forward into the snowbank. My bare hands sink into the snow to prevent me from getting a face full of the cold white stuff, and I look up to see the BMW screech down the street to make the green light at the corner of Fifth Avenue. "You're welcome," I mutter as I watch his car turn left and disappear around the corner. Getting back to my feet, I brush the snow off my numb hands and blow on them. Why do I even bother? I suppose I can't help myself from wanting to use my powers to help others, just like I couldn't help myself when it came to falling in love with Gail. Despite the good deeds and my minor interactions with others, I still can't get the memory of that kiss with Gail out of my head, and try desperately to think about something else, anything else, in order to come back out of that funk. Apart from the serial-killing, murderous other werewolf I faced down last summer, there are muggings I've stopped, stolen items I've recovered, and kidnapped victims I've saved. I've made a difference and helped people, not to mention the way the books I've written have likely helped many others. But it's no use. None of these thoughts are useful in diverting my attention from the fact that I'm cold, tired, and depressed about the loss of the love of my life. I want nothing more than to draw a nice hot bath, grab a book, a cup of coffee, and spend the rest of the morning soaking in that bliss and trying to drown out that darkness. That's when I remember what day it is. Monday. There'll be no time for soaking or wallowing. There are places I need to be. A 9 a.m. meeting with my agent and publisher about the forthcoming book tour. Then a brunch meeting across town with the producers who optioned my novel Tome of Terror with plans on turning it into a Hollywood movie featuring Maxwell Bronte, my antiquarian bookseller turned sleuth. Combine that with the fact I'm behind, as I always am, on the next manuscript that's due with my editor, and I realize there'll be no time to sit around and wallow in my memories of lost love. How can it be that so many of my dreams have come true, and yet I'm feeling lousy and just plain miserable? Money doesn't bring happiness. Success in my career doesn't bring happiness. But Gail made me happy, or at least I was happy about my life when I had her to share it with. On days like these, it's usually enough to have lunch with her, visit her at her occult shop, or even call her just to engage in small talk. Even though it's just a minor connection as friends, that's often enough to brighten my day. A glimmer of her bright light in the darkness that can be powerful. But she's out of town and busy at a conference where she is, no doubt, presenting workshops, sitting on panels, and engaging with companions from her field. I can't even have that. Who am I even kidding? How much time and energy have I wasted on pining away for Gail? I return, as I have so many times in the past several months, to thinking about that trip last summer that I took on the train up to STOWE, Vermont, to be there for her when her uncle was ill. To the mistake I made in making it about me and my feelings, instead of being the supportive friend she needed me to be. Sure, I was there for her, comforting Gail in her anxiety and worry over her Uncle Albert, and while I know it was important for me to express to her how deep my feelings were, I picked the most inappropriate time to do it. Uncle Albert's condition had taken a turn for the worse, and I was holding Gail while she shared how worried she was about being alone, how, apart from her brother, Uncle Albert was the only male family member she'd ever really known or been close to, and he was the only father figure she'd ever truly known. And that is the moment when I laid it all out, telling her she never had to be alone because she had me. But I didn't say this in the way a friend would or should. I said it with such an element of urgency and desperation that I could feel her immediately withdraw. That was not what she needed, and 100% not the right time for me to be acting that way. I screwed it up. Again. Just like I'd said and done the wrong things that caused our breakup all those years ago when we had been dating. Why do I never learn? What the hell is wrong with me? Why do I even bother? I make it only another few steps before the weight of it all comes crashing down on me. As my eyes mist over, I collapse onto a set of steps, unable to keep moving, bringing my bare hand, still frozen from the cold bite of the snow, up to my face. I weep. I cry. It all comes pouring out as I just let go, frustrated at the darkness of the world, at the fact that the average person is so callous, at the fact I can't just wallow in my sadness but have to get out there and put on a fake smile, at the idea that, having screwed it up and losing Gail, the love of my life, that I'll likely spend the rest of my days alone. What's the point? I say aloud. Remaining in that position, I hear the footsteps of others walking along the street on their own morning commutes. I smell the emotions on most of them, who are fearful of who and what I am. They shuffle hurriedly past me, their heartbeats picking up just a little until they are well clear of me. To them, I am either a homeless or mentally unstable person, perhaps both, that they'd rather not be involved with. I laugh, considering who and what I really am, and that these people who are avoiding me have absolutely no idea of the power that flows through my body. But despite being an alpha wolf, I'm more of a beta human. Sure, I've tried to use my special abilities to help others, following in the manner of comic book heroes like Spider-Man, but has it really made any difference? What's the goddamn point? I repeat the sentiment, not caring that there are people walking by that can hear me talking to myself. They're judging me, avoiding me. I was given this curse, this gift, these powers. I've done what I can to use them to help others, to assist strangers, to fight crime. I've tried to make a positive difference, tried to use my special abilities for good. And where has that gotten me? Sure, it helped me on my path to becoming an author with a handful of best-selling novels. Some people have read my books or watched the movies based on them and escaped from this bullshit world for a few hours. Big deal. I lost the love of my life because of this wolf secret and these powers. And my anonymous do-gooder actions using those powers have merely been small drops within a major sea of a skeptical and narcissistic world. But why should I even bother? Sure, I've been able to stop the occasional thug, thief, or mugger, but that hasn't really made anything in society any better. Right now, people are walking past me, passing judgment on a stranger, taking extra steps to avoid being near me, when right in front of them is a fellow citizen who could simply use a friend, if not a friendly gesture, the smallest thing. People suck. The world sucks. Why? I sob aloud. Why do I even try? The overwhelm swirls around me in an all-encompassing wave that continues to crash at me so intensely I barely attend to the fact there's someone walking down the street who actually slows down and approaches me instead of skirting around. I keep my face buried in my hands, unable to pull back the flow of tears enough to look up. But I can read the emotion of empathy clearly in this person who stands in front of me. "Don't feel bad," a gravelly male voice whispers, and on his breath comes the unmistakable scent of vodka. "You're not alone." I take a deep breath and try to respond, but I cannot. The subtle sound of a shifting of his clothing and the closeness of his heartbeat tells me he's bending over me. Then I feel something light placed across the tops of my feet. "You can use these more than I can. And it never hurts to keep trying, my friend," he whispers. "The smallest thing can make a big difference. Even the smallest thing like a stranger smiling and looking people like us in the eye." Then I hear him shuffle away. As he leaves, I recognize the sour and stale sweat of him and that scent of his breath, and the wordless exchange we shared when I passed him a few minutes ago as he was crawling from outside his cardboard box shelter. A simple glance, but within it a powerful acknowledgement. I see you. Getting myself a little more under control, I look up through tear-filled eyes and watch the homeless guy I'd passed a block or so back, who was now a good 20 feet away, walk over to the next corner, then turn east. He disappears around the corner. I look back down to see what he placed on my feet. It's a pair of light brown gloves. They're scratched, stained, and the pad of one of the pinky fingers and index fingers is worn all the way through, enough you could easily use it to control a smartphone. I pick them up and look at them. They are pathetic in their way, smelly, dirty, worn, and considered useless by most. But they would do the job to keep most of the hand and fingers warm in this bitter weather. He, of course, needs them more than I do. He has no idea how well off I am. He knows nothing about me, except I was someone feeling down and in need. So he gave me one of his few worldly possessions, and took the time to offer a few compassionate words. His gesture made this morning's darkness that much brighter. Maybe small things can make an enormous difference. Perhaps those small drops of good, if they continue, can have a positive and empowering impact on the ocean at large. I stand again, wiping the tears from my eyes and the lines of sticky snot that run down under my nose. I must look like hell. But that doesn't bother me. What started off as a miserable and frustrating morning commute has evolved into an inspiration to remind me why I should keep doing whatever little things in my little ways to make a difference, like this stranger just did. So I slip on the gloves and continue my walk home, this time with a bit more of a spring in my step.
About the story. This story takes place between books 2, the novella STOWE AWAY, and 3, the novel Fear and Longing in Los Angeles, in the Canadian Werewolf series. Michael Andrews is a decidedly different kind of werewolf. His stories are more often about the man behind the monster than the powerful alpha wolf he morphs into. They explore how he deals with these powers and this curse. Readers have described him as the thinking man's werewolf. And when I had an early beta reader of the original novel express his confusion in seeing an alpha wolf male fall down and weep at the feet of the woman he loved, begging for her forgiveness because that's not what an alpha wolf does, I finally understood why this character was so appealing to me. And that's partially where the idea of an alpha wolf who is a beta man came from. It's not all that fresh, not when you consider the mild-mannered and meek characters of Clark Kent or Peter Parker, whose alter egos take on a strong leading man or wisecracking persona. But Michael Andrews and the Canadian Werewolf stories and novels provide my take on the duality of living a secret life and doing whatever a person can to use their special powers to make their own slight difference in the world. And even if none of us actually have superpowers, I know that we each have our own unique and special abilities and can make those differences daily in the smallest but most powerful ways. This story was originally written and published in early 2024 as part of something called the Uncollected Anthology. The Uncollected Anthology is similar to an anthology, which is a collection of short stories, often combined into a single volume based on a theme determined by the editor, except that in this case, the stories are all released separately, but similarly branded and linked together. This project and series, which has been running for 11 years as I write this in the spring of 2025, features a core group of regular authors and a rotating individual guest author, writing short stories to a specific topic area or theme. The stories are all published with a preset branding style for the covers and the metadata, and each author pushes the tale out to their own audience. I was invited to join in on issue 33 in 2024, which took the Were-Creatures and Conundrums theme. The stories and authors in this uncollected volume are as follows. Carrie Kilgore, straying from her human lifetime. Leah R. Cutter, Wereteen, Jamie Ferguson and Never Return to the Sea, Annie Reed, The Protector, Bonnie Elizabeth, Fatal Delay, Rebecca M. Sinise, Sudden Shift, Debbie Mumford, Disappeared. And, of course, my own story, There Ain't No Cure for the Winterwolf Blues. I was invited for this theme for what I think are obvious reasons, the fact that I was writing a series of books about Michael Andrews. But it was also a callback to what inspired me to turn what had originally been a standalone novel into a series in the first place. It was when uncollected anthology author Jamie Ferguson and Deanna Nipling had invited me to write a werewolf story for an actual anthology series they were editing. The original version of the novella STOWE AWAY was written as a short story to submit to Monster Road Trip, which was the second of their amazing Monster Tales anthologies. Initially intending to write a story that came in under 10,000 words, it ended up being closer to 20,000 words. And, more importantly, it inspired me to want to explore the further adventures of Michael Andrews, which of course I started to do. In STOWE AWAY, I put him on a train bound for Stowe, Vermont. In the next novel, Fear and Longing in Los Angeles, I sent him to Hollywood. I had him return to New York for the remainder of the series, though I did have him visiting a retreat for monsters and only monsters in the building. And in A Canadian Werewolf in London, Ontario, I'll be sending Michael back to the stomping grounds of his youth in Ontario, Canada. But something I'd never explored was having Michael wake up naked from his nocturnal, wolfish romp in the winter. Every other story and novel I'd written in the series took place during months where there wasn't snow and bitter cold. So what would it be like, I wondered, for Michael's typical change between human and wolf in the middle of winter? Somewhere in these musings, the old Eddie Cochran's Summertime Blues song came to mind. So I leveraged the play on the lyrics from that song into the title of this story. It was, after all, fitting when considering the titles I've used for both the novels and the chapter titles for this series. I also wanted to explore a bit more of Michael's internal psyche, show him at a low point in his life. After all, the story takes place sequentially after the events in STOWE AWAY. That novella ends as he is about to reopen his heart up to his ex-girlfriend Gail by admitting how deeply he still loves her and makes another desperate plea for them to be together. While I didn't show the interaction between Michael and Gail, early in Book 3 in the series, Fear and Longing in Los Angeles, it's clear that this moment didn't go the way that Michael wanted. Gail continued to insist that they remain friends. And that's part of his motivation for wanting to get away and spend some time in Hollywood on the set of the movie adaptation of one of his novels. Combining this latest rejection and the seasonal depressive nature of the middle of winter, I figured it would be good to show Michael at a really low point in his life, easily succumbing to the loneliness and depression, and questioning whether it was worth it to keep sticking his neck out and trying to make a difference. While he is normally the hero in this series, I wanted to show how a simple and small act of kindness from a stranger, who's even more down on his luck than Michael, took the time to reach out with compassion and empathy, and how that can make a positive difference. It's a reminder not only to Michael, who manages to learn from and be inspired by that gesture, but to all of us that it's always worth it, and that small things can often make the most tremendous impact to someone else. Mark Leslie, May 2025. You've been listening to There Ain't No Cure for the Winterwolf Blues, a Canadian werewolf story, by Mark Leslie. Read by Scott Overton. There Ain't No Cure for the Winterwolf Blues was originally published in collaboration with the Uncollected Anthology. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without prior written permission. Thanks for listening.